to keep things short. Yeah. Otherwise, I believe he has so much to share with us.
Among the key things he mentioned at the vetting yesterday, I mean, there was a lot of focus on the cocoa sector and the challenges and all, but we'll come to that shortly. But one of the things that jumped at a lot of people is the policy they intend to return, which is schools farming, schools owning their own farms. What do you make of that?
You see, I think it is important that we do not run away from the basics of life. Yes, our country is so much trying to experiment many things, and we even want to behave even in a manner that we appear like we are more Catholic than the Pope when it comes to democracy, human rights, or development, or the rest. We need to really go back to the basics. All the secondary schools that have lands, why not the school farming system should still be encouraged? Because out of that, they are able to provide basic needs of the school. But that is not to say that they will not need foodstuffs to be purchased from the market and so on. But it's also another form of discipline, and then inculcating in the young men and women who are in the schools that agriculture is good, so that in future the few of them who would decide to go into agriculture will not be new to it. So it serves so many purposes. It provides us food, it creates discipline, and then it inculcates in the young men and women some experiences of agriculture, which some of them can choose and then go into in the future.
Same applies to religious leaders as well, religious groupings as well. I remember that when the president, at the very first engagement after his swearing in, he was at the Ahmadiyya Muslim group, their event, and he mentioned that he was looking forward to assisting them to become, for instance, the largest poultry producing company or religious group in the country. I mean, roping them in as well, is that a good move, and how beneficial would that be?
You see, we have not yet reached the point where there can be a clear separation of activities. And so you can see that if you are a teacher, it doesn't mean that you should not have farms. If you're a public servant, it doesn't mean that you should not have farms. So any person, you can have your profession and at the same time have farming to add to it. I believe that is what we need to do. And it's a very safe area, in the sense that if you look at all the educational institutions, as we have already talked about, their lands are well protected, and their lands are not degraded either by galamsey or by any other human activities. So if you also take the religious institutions and other institutions, wherever they are going to do their farming, their lands are also going to be protected. And again, you can use those lands as demonstration farms to engage in environmentally sustainable farming, like ecological farming, so that you don't apply so much chemicals to destroy the environment. So you can imagine throughout the country, if the government is able to mobilize Ghanaians, both individuals and institutions, to go into agriculture, and within 3 months, how much food is going to be produced. Within 4 months, how much food is going to be produced. And that food, when it is produced, it is used for immediate consumption, and then the excess is also given to the market. So we will suddenly increase our food stock, particularly for domestic production. And it is domestic production that has the potential to drive away poverty. It is not imports. So if we are able to produce more and people eat what they have produced, then even if it's not enough for their needs, they will now go to the market to purchase just a few, and prices will fall. You see, but there's no way out. You can use imports to bring down food prices, because the imports are linked to foreign exchange, and foreign exchange is not coming down. So you can't import and come and sell less than what you have imported. you know. So, and then those that are, imports, you must have money to be able to buy imports, anything that's imported to the country. But if you produce it yourself, you may not necessarily need immediate cash to go to your farm and then use your farm produce. So it's a very important part that we need to introduce this era of our agriculture. It's also because if you look at the southern part in particular, agricultural production should come down by about 50% its capacity because of the galamsey devastation. So the southern sector total agricultural production will not be as it used to be. It's coming down about 50%. And if the southern sector agricultural production is coming down by 50%, then it means that the country is already running short of what? Food. The northern sector, too, because of climate change, is not able to maintain its usual output. You see, and unfortunately, we are not doing enough to mitigate the climate change. How do we do that? It is through irrigation. And we have not been very successful in the irrigation agriculture because we have not been able to increase irrigation agriculture for the past few years. So it is a good start, and if we do it that way, and we are able to mobilize the people around, then of course we should expect to improve upon our food security and our food output in the country.
Speaking of agriculture in general, the minister says that as part of the party's promise, they intend to make it, very attractive to the youth. Is that the way to go?
Well, you see, the youth is a very complex area to deal with, and that is why they say that youth is a blunder. They have a lot of energies, they have a lot of interest, and they can go anywhere. When it comes to agriculture, the way you can attract the youth to agriculture is to just make agriculture attractive. Because there are already some people who are the youth and they are in agriculture. You need to improve upon their output and their incomes. And the rest of the youth will watch and then they will move in themselves. I've just returned from the north and I can see that around the houses, people have dug their own boreholes and they're doing gardening. Now the question is, if you want to attract people to do things, then you should help those that are already committed to agriculture by digging their own wells and boreholes and doing their gardening. You should encourage them, give them inputs, make sure they get markets whenever they produce. And then the rest of the youth would also move into it. So to attract the youth is a good thing, but over the years we have not been successful in attracting the youth into agriculture because we have not made agriculture attractive. And we cannot continue to use the old system of agriculture where hoe and cutlass, and then when you produce you don't get the market. And then how can the farmer be the person to produce and at the same time be looking for a market? I mean, you have a divided mind. Just like what is happening in cocoa. A cocoa farmer does not look for market. He simply produces and then the market is there for him. Most of the agricultural produce, we can do same. And that is what we need to focus more on. And then people will concentrate on agriculture. The youth will go there and then without spending so much to encourage the youth to go there.
Let's briefly touch on the cocoa sector. I mean, he highlighted how production has hit a 2-decade low, how cocoa board is, running. I mean, we're seeing cocoa produce, the yields falling. Yes, we're seeing the expenditure of cocoa board also going up. listening to him, do you think that in terms of the solutions they have for the cocoa sector, they are on the right path, even though he was not allowed, he was not going to delve in deep into the challenges because he has the potential of also affecting the markets?
You know, if you look at the production of cocoa, that is a perennial crop. It's a tree crop, and then once it starts bearing the fruits, it takes years before you replace it, unless you are affected by swelling suit, which has no cure. There's no solution to it except to cut down the trees and replace it. So there are three major challenges within the cocoa industry or cocoa production. One, the climate is one. Two, we have the swelling suit. And then three, smuggling. You see.
What about galamsey also affecting the yield?
You see, so the galamsey is a new addition to the existing problems. Now, if you look at so how do you deal with the climate change question? Is to innovate and make sure that there is enough water for the cocoa trees. So you may have to use surface water to do so. That is irrigation. You use irrigation for cocoa. And Cocoa Board, so a few years back, attempted that. And they went in for they went to African Development Bank and took a loan of $250 million to do irrigation. But unfortunately, they couldn't do it because galamsey had polluted all the water. So you see, that is where now galamsey has come in. The type of irrigation that is to be used for cocoa can no longer be done, or that is the conventional one, the traditional one, can no longer be done because all the waters within the cocoa growing areas are galamsey water. And the irrigation pipes cannot take that. So that is a closed area now for us. What I am not too sure, and I believe is an opportunity, is to dig boreholes. You know, to have boreholes which they can use to water instead of using the surface water. So that is another opening which can still be done. Then the swelling suit, that one, whenever there's a coat, you just have to cut that and replace. But you see, what is the use of doing all these things and you produce, and at the end of the day, the produce is smuggled out? You know, and that is man-made. Cocoa Board became helpless, and the country became helpless, and so unprecedented cocoa smuggling out of this country, and that was the peak of it, and that brought many of us to be asking whether there was now a state failure. Because you can't produce your cocoa, and you allow it to be smuggled out to Burkina Faso, to Ivory Coast, to Togo, and everything. So the smuggling at our time is now, it has reached a point where it's unacceptable. The galamsey has also now come to pollute all the waters, not to talk about cocoa farms that have been sold out by farmers. That's one. And then two, farmers were forced to run away from their cocoa farms and give those farms up for galamsey. And then three, the cocoa tree, lives in the community of trees, and it is not a Sahelian tree where it can stand on its own. It's not like the baobab tree where it can depend on its own. Cocoa tree is dependent on the other trees, that is the forest. That is why you find out that it is good to have forest, other trees on while the cocoa trees are there. Now the forest is being destroyed by galamsey. So the cocoa tree now is exposed to the vagaries of the weather. So you should expect low output from the cocoa trees, even if it exists. So all these things put together, Ghana's cocoa production has declined, and beyond that, what the little that we have produced, much of it is also smuggled out. So the industry is almost at the verge of collapse, and we need to really work hard to bring back the cocoa industry.
Did you hear anything substantive with regard to, improving irrigation so that we don't have to be, depending on the seasonal rain, among others. In the past, there was talk about, one village, one dam. Those were supposed to help with irrigation. Unfortunately, that did not fully materialize. In terms of the minister's vetting, did you hear him, outline any specifics with how to deal with the issue of irrigation, having all year production?
Well, you see, if you look at, because it is vetting, the nominee is restricted to questions that they ask you. Because if they don't ask you a question relating to that, you cannot answer. But so the vetting only gives out a few points. But I think beyond that, there's supposed to be a national agricultural policy by the government to show how we are going to address different sectors of the agriculture sector, the subsectors of the agriculture sector, and all those things were not really. They didn't come out because probably questions were not put on that. But there was something that I think that we must caution. I mean, we must tread cautiously.
Okay.
For instance, the price of cocoa. The world market price, and then that is given to the farmers. The world market price depends on the method that you use for your sale. If you do the forward sale, even if prices go up now, you have already committed yourself to an earlier price, which is lower than current price. So even though the current price has gone up, you cannot benefit from it because you have already sealed a deal with the syndicated loan, those who provided.
It's like hedging.
You have already hedged, exactly. So once you have already hedged, you cannot benefit from the current price. Then the second thing is that you can sell as and when the price comes up. But because Ghana, we don't have money ourselves to support our farmers, we hedge and take that money. But if we have the money to support our farmers, then we can wait and sell our cocoa as and when the price goes up. It has its advantages and disadvantages. But whatever be the case, we cannot continue to go in for this syndicated loan. What is Bank of Ghana there for? What is Bank of Ghana there for? Why can't Bank of Ghana give Cocoa Board the resources to purchase the cocoa, and then when they sell it, the benefit that would have gone to the foreign banks because they are giving us syndicated loan, that benefit will come to Bank of Ghana. I mean, no one can reason that those syndicated banks just do that for nothing. They gain from giving it the syndicated loan. So why can't Bank of Ghana take that role and supply the money for the purchase of the beans, and then Bank of Ghana would then benefit from what would have otherwise gone to the syndicated loans, banks, which are foreign banks. So we need to look at it from that angle again. And apart from that, you see, it's a tool. Those banks, the way they also treat us is that they will wait until the price, you get to the point of the buying season. You open the season to buy the cocoa. And yet they have not yet given you the syndicated loan. Once they have not given you the loan, your negotiating power reduces because you need the money badly. And at that point, you will now come to have terms that are not so favorable for you. Again, those things are there and which we need to correct. So, but if we use the Bank of Ghana to give us the loans, Cocoa Board the loan to purchase the beans, we can overcome some of those challenges that go with negotiating for the loan.
one major issue that we have faced consistently when it comes to agric, and I always tell my colleagues when we are having conversations about agric that one of the major challenges that faces agric is, post-harvest losses. We've been told this since we were in primary school through to basic and secondary school, but it still remains a challenge. It's such that we have foods that come in season and it's in abundance, and all of a sudden when the season is over, the prices of those items you cannot even literally buy, or when you're buying you're just getting a very small amount of it. The minister says that one of the ways to address this is that they are going to encourage the private sector to set up small processing plants in near farms to reduce food loss. Is that a good move?
Well, the point about production has to do with marketing. Before you produce, there must be market, particularly if it is not only for consumption, but beyond consumption, you send it to the market. So to create that market, a functional market for agricultural production, is the major challenge that we've had. Now it requires a cluster of policies, to be implemented at the same time to be able to address that. And that is not within the domain of the Ministry of Agriculture alone. Because agriculture, the ministry is to produce. The ministry has less control over some other policies that undermine the good things of the sector. For instance, our trade policies. How much do we import into this country? If they are not properly aligned, our imports are not properly aligned, we can have increased production. And then when we have increased production, there will not be market for the local produce. And that's what we are just talking about the glut and so. What does a glut mean? It means that you are produced in excess of what the people need at that time. And again, and then to address that, you need to look at your imports. You have to reduce your imports in some of the foods area. For instance, if we want to increase maize production, then you have to be minded by how much more maize you bring into the country again, so that you can allow the local maize to have market. So you need to do that. Then the second thing is that because agricultural produce are bulky and perishable, you really need to have processing system which is very effective. And I listened to the minister. He's trying to suggest that having processing factories close to the farm gates will be a solution, and that is doable. But we would have that it is not only said, but it should be done. You see that it should be done, so we can avoid the post-harvest losses, and then also create market for agricultural production. And we can only do that when there's a proper alignment between the Ministry of Agriculture's production strategies and that of Ministry of Trade. You see, otherwise, while they are increasing production, the Ministry of Trade is also busy looking at which one they want to import more into the country. But fortunately, you can see that the Ministry of Trade has been aligned with agribusiness development policy that of the government, and there must be that strong linkage so that that new policy and that new alignment of the Ministry of Trade can be functional, and then we can benefit from it. And the linkages between the industry and agriculture, I believe the ministers know, and the current minister knows, designate knows. We don't still know who, the new minister for trade. They must work closely so that there can be a synergy of the policies and then whatever they do, so that at the close of the day, we cannot have overproduction, and then that will lead to farmers losing their capital as a result of post-harvest losses, and then the near consumers will also be able to have food at lower prices. If we are not able to address the food situation, then everything about our economy will go in a bad direction. And that one is already clear. And I believe the Minister for Finance and is minded that when we talk about inflation and the statistical service consistent figures show that food inflation is the major cause of our national inflation. So how we are going to bring down food inflation without creating waste like post-harvest losses and so on is the headache of the government. And I believe that those who are being made to manage the economy, like the finance minister, the minister for agri, trade, and other ministries and agencies, must work together to ensure that we have enough food, we bring down food inflation, and the economic indicators would get back normal.
Now, what do you make of the decision to have agribusiness as a sub-sector under trade?
Well, for now, I think that if you want to make a policy, I want to place, not that agribusiness was not there. It was there, but it was not emphasized and being made a distinct policy area like this government is trying to do. Now, so they have brought it out as a distinct area that they want to focus on. If you look at the performance of the Ministry of Agriculture in the past, it has not been impressive. Even though, if you look at it technically, they have got the technical infrastructure and their competence. But unfortunately, over the years, they have performed badly. How will you trust a ministry that has been pumped with billions of Ghana cedis in this planting for food and jobs, and they never produce enough food for us, and then they never also created the jobs? So I believe it is prudent and it's a cautious move by the government not to put this agribusiness development policy under the Ministry of Agriculture. Because for me, the Ministry of Agriculture needs to be restructured. There are serious administrative and bureaucratic bottlenecks which needs to be addressed. And when you don't address those ones, which look like a bucket that is having leakages, you must mend the leakages before you pour in more water.
What are some of these challenges you want to be, fixed in terms of the restructuring of the Ministry of Agri?
The Ministry of Agri, for instance, only exists in Accra. It doesn't exist on the ground. Because if you look, the extension services part of the Ministry of Agri, which is very, very vital, is under the local government ministry. And that creates coordination problems. So the ministry in Accra will take decisions, and then they if you have to now cross to another ministry, which is local government, to implement your policies, then that creates a bureaucratic gap. You see, it creates a bureaucratic gap. I think that, and again, if you look at livestock, where is livestock in this country? You cannot have the whole head office of livestock in Accra. It should be around the northern part of the country. If you look at cereals, you can't have cereals are mainly in the northern part of the country. Why should the director and those who are managing the cereal are sitting in Accra? How do you, it creates coordination problems. And that needs to be looked at seriously, even if they will not move the head offices to the northern part of the country or where it is most needed. Then they should create the management system to become more efficient, so that even though they are in Accra, it does not create a management gap. a coordination gap. All these things needs to be looked at. And for the Minister of Agriculture, it doesn't have any good reputation at all so far of using our resources well. It has become a waste pipe so far. And I believe that the government will pay particular attention and ensure that that ministry really is reorganized to be able to perform the functions that our minister nominee is thinking for the ministry.
My final question to you is, I think it was a question that was also asked at the vetting committee. The assessment of the NDC side of the Planting for Food and Jobs has not been a favorable one. They don't think that it succeeded. Do you share in that opinion that the policy failed?
Well, it's not that I share the opinion. We have been, from day one, have been questioning the government that the policy was failing. But the government never agreed with us. It never agreed with us. What they did was to talk down on us as if we don't know anything about it, and then also to come out with figures that do not, reflect on the ground. For instance, even this one was said again at the last State of the Nation address by His Excellency, the past president, that maize production in 2020 had gone up by 110%. And those figures at that time in 2021, on the 5th of January 2021, when His Excellency the President gave his State of the Nation address, we challenged and said that no, they gave me wrong figures. Rice production has gone up by 48% over 2019 production. Meanwhile, in 2019, there was glut of rice production in the rice production areas. And then come 2020, you now have 48% more than the 2019 production. Meanwhile, when he said maize production had gone up by 110% in 2020, few months the line, that is March, April, there was no maize at all. And it was in 2021 that the poultry industry collapsed because there was no maize and there was no soya bean for them. So the point is that the Planting for Food and Jobs program has failed woefully. We saw it failing. We alerted the government, but they did not. They did nothing. Even their own statements suggested that it was failing, because in 2021, it was the ministry that told us that donkeys were carrying the fertilizer across the border, and they were unaided by human beings, and because of that, they could not arrest them. It was in 2021, on the 16th July graphic front page, the Minister for Agriculture by then told Ghanaians that government was not paying for subsidized fertilizer. So the producers or the suppliers refused to give fertilizer. So by 2021, there was no fertilizer for farmers. As late as July, when the farming season for the southern sector was first one was completed, and then the northern sector had begun, and then there was no fertilizer. So all these things were indications that the program was collapsing. And indeed, it left us with nothing. Food production has not gone up. The jobs that it was supposed to create never came. And then we only had a big bill to pick. The minister also attempted by then to bring plantain from Western North, to come and feed people in Accra. Meanwhile, plantain was not part of the Planting for Food and Jobs program. So in the areas that Planting for Food and Jobs program had emphasized and government was spending money on, maize, rice, soybean, and the rest, we had nothing. Tomato, we had nothing. Meanwhile, plantain, which was not part of the Planting for Food and Jobs, was rather in an abundance, And the minister capitalized on that, bringing it to feed people in Accra. And where is it? We raised concerns about it, that it was not feasible and it should stop. Today, the story is for all of us to see whether what we were saying
was true
or not.
Now, finally, what do you expect this administration to do differently to improve our agricultural sector?
Well, I've said that the administration, first and foremost, through the Minister for Agriculture, though he has got a good knowledge of the sector, still have to have a consensus with the industry players, because the sector is diverse. And sometimes when we talk about the agricultural sector, people think that it is homogeneous. It is not. It's very, very diverse. And the challenges are different. You know, the needs of farmers, rice farmers, is different from the needs of maize farmers. So he needs to first have that consensus with the stakeholders. Two, he also needs to listen. The risk is that because he has got good knowledge in it, he may think that, oh, he knows it all, and that he will go ahead on his own. That cannot work. Then the third one is that he must ensure that any peso that is spent, particularly in terms of subsidy and then fertilizers and so on, gets to the farmers. But what they are trying to do is to use the Farmer Services Center, which should be across the country. They have to ensure that any support that government gives reaches the target group, and that is the farmers. And they also make sure that the farmers use the assistance, that is the credit, for its purpose. It's not always the case that farmers use the inputs for the purpose. For instance, fertilizer, farmers can choose to sell some of the fertilizers and make money, and then apply some. So at the end of the day, because you have applied less fertilizer than you ought to have done, the output will not be good, and then they will blame the program. So we need to move down the ground and do that. We can have the broad policies, which are good, but our major problem as a country is at the micro level. How do we implement it? And I believe that this new minister, working to fulfill the government's policy, will be minded to make sure that we don't fall into the whole trap of the Plan for Food and Jobs, which was a good policy, but ended up having nothing to show for it.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. We're grateful that you were able to speak to us.
Thanks very much, too.
You had to speak to Edward Karawe. He is a former General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union. So we've spoken to analysts from the three sectors that appeared before the committee yesterday: education, roads and highways, and then that of the Agric Ministry. All of them sharing their insights with regards to how the ministers designate fared and their level of appreciation they exhibited with regard to the challenges and the issues within the sector. It's still the Morning Star, Hill Star 103.5 FM. We'll go for a break. When I return, I'd love to hear from you.
Let's have breakfast on the